Let's talk about the Civil War. Could the South have won the Civil War? Damn right they could. It's perfectly true that the South was at a horrible disadvantage. In population, the North had more than twice the population. In industrial capability, there was not a single cannon foundry in the entire South. The South was badly deprived in terms of natural resources, communications links, and modern industrial machinery for producing munitions. And the Northern blockade strangled it and made it impossible for it to gain revenue from cotton, which not only was all of the South's money, but cotton was half of all American exports at the start of the Civil War. But the South still could have won, because the North had an election in 1864. And had McClellan, the Democratic candidate, the former Union commander who stood for compromise, have won that election, the North would have folded quickly, and there would have been a negotiated peace that would have established a permanent Southern Confederacy. Everything was on the line in the election of 1864. In fact, in August of 1864, Lincoln wrote a letter to his cabinet about what to do if we lost the election, and what we must do between the defeat and the end of my presidency, which then would last until March. We didn't have January inaugurations then. And he said what we have to do to win the war during that period, because it will surely be lost after that period, meaning when he left office. The thing that changed and that gave Lincoln the victory was the end of the domination of the Democratic generals. The generals largely deployed on the eastern frontier in the battle between Washington and Richmond, a duel to see who could take whose capital. It was largely led by McClellan and other Democratic Party generals who had been part of the Union military structure for a long time, stayed loyal to the Union, but were not in favor of destroying the Confederacy. They had no particular beef with slavery and didn't oppose the plantation system. They simply wanted the Union to be held together. And as a result, they fought a war with very limited collateral damage. There was no effort to disrupt the Southern economy other than the blockade. There was no savaging of the countryside. There were no great sweeps to cut the South, divide the South, cut it in half. And there was just simply a set-piece series of battles in the East, in the area of Northern Virginia. But then a bunch of Republican generals took over, led by Grant and Sherman and Sheridan, and they were largely deployed in the West, where the fundamental goal was not just to defeat the army of the South, but to defeat the South, rip up its economy, destroy its food chain, disrupt its railroads, burn its plantations and its farms, liberate its slaves, and make it impossible for the South to function as a nation, make it impossible for them to continue the war. And with this brief, with this goal, Grant fought battle after battle, taking huge casualties in the process, but being willing to do that, and defeated the South in a series of battles, starting with Fort Donelson and ending with the siege of Vicksburg, and then the Battle of Chattanooga. Throughout that, he basically cut the South in half. He took the Mississippi River for the Union, which meant that the states on the west side of the river, Arkansas, Louisiana, and Texas, were functionally no longer part of the Confederacy. And then he looped around and made a left turn and ran up through the South, knocked Mississippi out of the war, cut off Alabama, marched through Georgia, severing southern Georgia and Florida from Confederacy and reducing it to North and South Carolina and parts of Virginia. And that was not a viable nation. It couldn't sustain a war. And when the election came in November of 1864, Lincoln won, because the handwriting was on the wall and everybody saw a Union victory was in prospect. People have talked about whether the Battle of Gettysburg was crucial. If the South had won the Battle of Gettysburg. Well, if the South had decisively won Gettysburg, then that could have forced peace, because the South could then have divided the North, cutting off the Midwest from the Northeast. and then it might well have been able to force a peace. But ultimately, it was the Battle of Vicksburg that really killed the Confederacy. They happened on the same day as Gettysburg, July 4th, oddly enough, 1863. But it was Vicksburg that cut the Confederacy in half. It was Vicksburg that opened the core of the Confederacy in Mississippi and Alabama and Georgia to the ravages of federal troops in their bid to destroy the whole Southern plantation system. So after losing Vicksburg, it's unlikely that the South could have won the war. Thanks for watching, and love to have your opinions. Let me know what you think. Go to comments at dickmorris.com. Love to see it.